Hi, Gabriel from the NYC Guitar School. I'm here today with an introduction to improvisation. We're going to be talking about how we can really zone in on the chords when we play guitar, and one of the most important aspects to that is identifying the notes from our chords in our solo work. So there's a couple of prerequisites to this. We want to know that we can understand some of the terminology. I'm going to be referring to major chords, minor chords and dominant chords, and additionally knowing how those are constructed. So it would be useful to know the notes that we use to make a major chord being the first, third and fifth, a minor chord of first, flat and third and fifth, and a dominant of first, major third, fifth and flat and seven. So if you understand all that terminology, keep on watching, this is all going to make sense. If that is new to you, I'd suggest going back and checking out the Beyond Basic series. We cover a lot of that ground when we talk about the forming of chords. Today it's more about linear playing over the top of those chord changes. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at introducing the concept of a 2-5-1 chord progression. And now what I mean by a 2-5-1 chord progression, we're going to number the chords from a specific key, and that's going to be the chords that we are going to play. So let's use the key of C major, so why not? So our one chord is going to be built off the root of the key, the C. So our C, our one chord is a major 7. Now the next chord would be D, that's our 2 chord. The third would be off the E, fourth off the F, fifth off the G, sixth off the A, seventh off the B, and bring us back to the C. So you can hear this particular chord qualities that kind of happen with that. The basic idea is 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is the dominant 7, 6 is minor, 7 is a minor 7 with a flattened fifth or a half diminished chord, and that takes us back to our 1, our root. Okay, so now we know that, we can number those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we think of the 2-5-1 progression, that means we're playing the 2, the D, the second chord from the sequence, the 5, which is the G, and the 1, which is the C. So specifically there I'm playing a D minor 7, with the notes D, F, A and C, playing a G dominant 7, with G, B, D and F, and then my C major 7 with C, E, G and B. Okay, so that's our starting point. That's what we're going to be learning to improvise over. Now, when we improvise with a set of chord changes, it's really important that we understand what we're going to be playing. Now, one of the really common misconceptions with improvising on the guitar is that you can just play one scale to fit over the top of the whole thing. And while theoretically that would work, in this instance, all of these chords come from the key of C major. In theory, you could just play a C major scale over the top. However, it would be very easy to trap yourself with some pretty ugly sounding chord. So what the tool we're going to use to stop our lines sounding super vague is the concept of chord tones. Now a chord tone is just a fancy way of saying the notes that come from the particular chord. So for example, if we're playing the D minor chord, it would be any note from the chord D minor. So D, F, A and C. You can use any of those 4 notes. Likewise for the G, you could use G, B, D and F, and for the C, E, G and B. Now that may sound quite restrictive, but that's way more information than you first could expect. So let's get into how we can practice this. The first thing we're going to do is we're just going to play along the first string of the guitar. We're only going to play on that one string, because I think it's really important to get comfortable with navigating one string before we move on to using all 6. Okay, so the first exercise, we're going to take our chords, the D minor, the G7 and the C major 7, and we're just going to play the root of each chord on the first string. So of the D minor, we're going to play the note D, which is on the 10th fret. For the G7, we're going to play the note G, which is on the 3rd fret of the first string. And for the chord C, we're going to play the note C, which is on the 8th fret. So we would have... Now you can hear very clearly that's outlining this. It sounds pretty clear, at least to me. And we can do the same thing on the second string. otherwise we can continue with the next string, so we would play D, G, C. We can continue on the fourth string with D, G, C. Let's keep going. D, G, C. Lastly, D, G, C. Okay, so that's step one. Step two would be to play exactly the same thing but on two strings this time, and that would avoid jumping all over the place on the guitar neck. So let's start on our D here. Now let's think about where the nearest G would be, which is going to be on the second string, and then to our C, back on the first string. Now let's take note of that shape, because that shape's going to be mirrored across the string. So again, if we start on the D here, we have that there. We can even play that at the off octave. Same thing would go on the next string. We would start on the note D. We'd have our change there. Let's try it here. And lastly. Okay, so that's the first exercise. We're just going to get really comfortable playing the roots of each chord on one string and then two strings. Now, once we're comfortable with that, we're going to add in the third of the chord. So we're going to play the root, then the third. So for the D, it's going to be the D and the F. So we would go D, F. For the G, it would be G and B. And for the C, it's going to be C and E. So again, if I play that sequence again, if I go D minor to G to C. Now this is where we start getting into examining the different ways of approaching this. We don't necessarily have to play each pair ascending, we can try and create a melodic line now. So, for example, here I might go F down to D, down to B, down to G, up to C, back to the E. So we have a melodic contour going down, and back up. Or we could even keep going down, we could go. Moving me on to the next string where I could repeat the exercise going up the other way. So for the D minor we'd have D and F, then we could have G and B, and then why don't we go to our C here, and then back up to the E. So that we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, if we were to play it in time. Okay, I'm going to practice this on all 6 of the strings, just to get comfortable with utilising our first and our third. Okay, so at this point, this is a really great place to stop and review these exercises. And right now, focus on using a 2-5-1 progression, using our D minor, G7, and C. Once you're comfortable within that key, we can try some other keys, maybe like an F major progression where we would go G minor, C7 to F. Keep experimenting, find what works best. We're going to dive a little bit further into some of the different concepts that we can use with improvising, really trying to outline the chord changes, because that's the most important thing when we're thinking about improvising. This lesson was useful. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm going to be covering more of the minutiae of improvising on the guitar and trying to demystify some of the aspects, because I know it's quite an intimidating subject when we think about learning the guitar, and especially learning improvisation. Thank you so much for making it this far into the video. Please comment, like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon to receive notifications every time we post a new video. And on behalf of myself, Gabriel, and New York City Guitar School, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.